back to IT Project Management. In this module, we will be making the transition from project quality management to project risk management and look at the benefits that a strong risk management framework brings to any project in IT and beyond. In this module, we will look at an overview of the risk management process area and risk identification processes. Here's what you will learn in this module. You will learn how to apply the project risk management framework, especially when it comes to risk identification and the causes and effects of project risks. You will also learn how to locate and apply a risk identification taxonomy and how to word a risk correctly so that all the parts you need for successful analysis and response preparation are available. And now let's explore what risk management is and what it tries to teach us. Let's start with an example. Imagine you're getting ready to leave your house with your fancy brand new laptop in hand. You're looking outside through the window and see that the sky is a menacing gray and the wind has picked up. The weather report, as you remember, says there's a 70% chance of rain. Your laptop contains the file of your capstone project, which you need to print out on campus or at the office, and you're running out of time. Your network router is broken, so you can't upload your file to Google Drive or OneDrive, and you forgot your cell phone and your only flash drive at your friend's house. Last week you had $50, but decided to spend it on a new computer game instead of buying that external hard drive that you've been thinking about. What do you do? Do you take an umbrella or put the laptop in a backpack or maybe both? Or do you decide that, today's your lucky day and you can't wait to show your shiny new machine off to the public, so you carry the laptop open under your arm and start walking? So what if it does rain? And what if you find out the hard way that your laptop isn't waterproof? Even better or worse, it is not at all waterproof. That's what risk management is all about. And yes, we will come back to this case later. Obviously, no project is without risk, whether that is transporting a laptop to a place where you print out a capstone project that needs to be turned in right then, or whether you're upgrading 500 laptops for administrators in a hospital chain. The project risk management knowledge area in the PMBOK gives us a great framework we can use to manage project risks and how we respond to them. As with all planning activities, the plan risk management activity starts in the planning phase. This is also when we start identifying risks to our project, determine how badly they can affect our project success both in qualitative and in quantitative terms, and, if they are bad enough, how we should handle them. Once we have decided how to handle them, it is important to follow up on this plan to make sure it gets done, and the risk is reduced or disappears completely. But even more, we need to constantly keep an eye out for risks on our projects. In fact, risk management on a project happens not just at the outset, it happens all the time, from initiating to closing, no matter whether you have a waterfall or an agile project. Project risk management is continuous. The PMBOK defines risk as an uncertain event or condition that can have one or more causes, that can have one or more effects or impacts that can be known or unknown. That's a big sentence. Let's unpack that a bit. A risk is an uncertain event that can influence our project objectives negatively, and that's the classic definition of risk, or positively. But it is also uncertain, meaning that there is a probability that the risk will materialize, but there is also a smaller probability that it won't occur. A risk can have one or more causes. This means that we need to be on the lookout for potential changes in things we assumed were stable, like requirements, assumptions and constraints that we listed in the project charter, or any other conditions that could come up and could affect the plan for our project. That can have one or more effects or impacts. This means that we need to check whether the current conditions in our project environment still support our project outcome, or if they have changed. Of course, there's also a chance that we will not become aware of them before they start changing our plans, and then we have to react to them. What we can do, though, is constantly ask ourselves and our team what could possibly go wrong in our project that we won't be able to finish on time, on budget, and with the best quality we can build. This also means that we need to sharpen our senses to possible triggers for risks and be ready to take action when they occur. We need to figure out how likely or probable a risk is to occur. For example, if the weather report predicts a 70% chance of rain, it is very likely that it will rain. We then will want to look for the possible causes and see if we can't perhaps eliminate them. That's hard with the weather. Once we have those, and let me assure you, project risks are like potato chips. You never have just one. We need to rank the risks that we have found so we can attack the biggest ones first. Once we know those, we can plan how we're going to attack them with plans, by ignoring them, or, yes, really, by shifting the blame and the consequences to someone else. When we have made our plans, it's important to follow up on them and to check how they have helped reduce the risk. And when the risk is reduced enough, we stop and we turn to other risks that are higher on our priority list. There's a difference between a risk and a problem. The major component of a risk is its likelihood or probability. To become a risk, a situation can't have more than a 90 to 95% probability of happening. If a situation has more than a 90 to 95% probability of happening, it is a problem, and we need to be reactive to it instead of being proactive. Please pause this video and take a look at this situation here. Then decide if it is a risk or a problem. When you think you have a good answer, come back. Here is my answer. This is clearly a risk. Given the lack of object-oriented technology experience and training, there is a possibility that the product will not meet performance or functionality requirements within the defined schedule. That possibility is not absolutely certain because several developers are familiar with the object-oriented concept, just not with its application. So maybe the theoretical knowledge will help them. We can do something to reduce the likelihood here, namely by having them sharpen their application skills through hands-on training. So if a risk is an uncertain event or condition that, if it occurs, has a positive or negative effect on the project objectives, we can use continuous risk management to increase the probability and impact of positive events and decrease the probability and impact of events adverse to the project. There's a sequence of processes for this. These processes help us reduce project risks quickly, methodically, and with the least incremental cost to our project. They are risk planning, risk identification, risk assessment, developing risk strategies, defining a risk response, risk monitoring and control, and risk evaluation. Remember that these processes happen not just once in a project, but all the time. There will always be new risks that come your way, and it's your job to find, evaluate, and manage them. Risks impact project objectives. This is especially true for performance, quality, and technical parameters on our product, or for product and environmental safety, but also for our project parameters, especially schedule or budget. Now, you can foresee some of the risks because you can see their indicators. Remember the rain from our laptop example? We saw the black clouds beforehand. The rain is the trigger or the condition that we observed. The risk was our laptop shorting out and us losing our project file. Now, do we know that rain is not good for electronics? I hope we do. So that laptop breaking and us losing our file because of the rain, that was a foreseeable risk. These foreseeable risks are called known risks. So while the laptop was still dry, and we still had our file, and we knew the chance of rain was 70%, we had a risk. In fact, we had a known risk. As soon as it started raining, that risk became 100% real because our laptop did in fact break. So now we have a problem. The thing is, you can identify, analyze, and prepare for known risks and reduce their probability and impact. How could we have prevented our laptop and file loss from happening? Well, we could have invested in an umbrella or a backpack to keep the laptop dry, or we could have asked a friend with a data plan on their cell phone to come over and help us upload the file to the cloud, or we could have contacted the administrative office and asked for an extension until the rain stopped, or any other creative solution you can come up with. So while you can plan for known risks, unknown risks are harder to identify. To get them out in the open, you may need to use historical information from earlier projects or events in order to find and assess them. That finding usually starts with someone on your team or an external stakeholder feeling uncomfortable about an issue. If you decide not to acknowledge that issue, it can quickly develop into a problem. On the other hand, if you decide to look into it as a potential risk, you can move it from unknown to known. And what you know, you can manage. That management is what makes risk identification the hallmark of a good project manager. Having risks on a project is a very good thing, because it means that you have looked at the project and the product from all sides and are being careful. Not having risks is in fact a bad thing, because it means that as the project manager, you're not handling your project carefully enough. Now let's take a closer look at risk identification. As with user stories, in risk identification, there is a grammar that connects the three questions that we need to keep asking throughout the project. The first question is what, as in what is the worst thing that can happen? Here the example is alpha code development may take longer than anticipated. The next question we need to ask is how is the risk going to affect the project or the product? Or in other words, what is the consequence or impact? Here, the consequence of code development taking longer than anticipated is that the product performance will not meet any of the benchmark requirements. The third question we need to ask ourselves is, why is this a risk? In other words, what are the root causes? Here we're seeing 6 root causes, from a personnel issue, namely that only one person is coding, to the customer being difficult, which we will probably want to elaborate in a little bit more detail. These root causes in the pink box are also often called risk drivers. Risk drivers may force a project to have outcomes different from the plan. You should always try to fix the risk drivers along with handling the risk. Otherwise, the same risk may reoccur. Risk identification, which starts in the planning phase but continues throughout the entire project, is a tough job. That's why it is so important to have an idea where to look and which questions to ask when you need to make as many risks known as possible. Because remember, having risks on a project is a very good thing. It means you're looking for any possible traps you could fall into and you're preparing to handle them. That's why good organizations have a risk taxonomy as part of their project management methodology. Here's an example of one. It lists many of the areas in which you want to ask these 3 questions, what, why, and how, to find the things that could potentially go wrong and prepare for the just-in-case situation. Now, the categories on this list here depend on the organization and its culture. To find out what has caused risks or problems in the past, you will want to analyze risks from past projects, lessons learned. You may want to interview experts or probe institutional memory. There are numerous methods to brainstorm risks. You're seeing a few of them on this list. My favorite has always been to get a small group of project team members together at the project outset, give each one a stack of Post-it notes, and write the following question on the whiteboard. What about this project keeps you up at night? Everybody then gets 15 minutes to write down as many worries as they can and sticks the Post-it notes on the whiteboard. Then we read through them, group them, and go into step 2. Step 2 goes like this. Once we know what the major risk areas are, we need to determine what the drivers are. The risk is the effect, the drivers are the causes. One of the best ways to visualize that is the fishbone or Ishikawa diagram at the bottom here. The actual risk impact is the head of the fish, where we post our major risk. The drivers can fall into a number of categories. Sometimes you may even already see them on the Post-it notes on the whiteboard. Those categories become the major bones in the fish's skeleton, and all the risk drivers or root causes on the board can go in any of these categories. Then we ask why for each reason a number of times and answer because this and that. That way, you can dig deeper and deeper into those root causes and find the most consequential and financially expedient driver to tackle first. As you have heard before, risks have a grammar. You may remember this from the project charter as well, since your top 3 to 5 project risks are listed there. We take our answers to the 3 questions, what, how, and why, and we connect them in a sentence. We start the sentence with the condition or the trigger and the word if, then continue with the word then and the consequence or impact, and the word because to signal that the cause for the risk is following. Now, here's the important thing. We have to use the helper word may to indicate that there is a probability that the risk may happen. If you use the word will in this place, you are replacing the probability with certainty, those 100%, and you're no longer describing a risk, but a problem. So using may is important. Let's look at some examples. Here are 4 sample risk statements which all follow this grammar. Let's analyze the first one together. If project funding is not allocated by the end of March, here you have your condition or your trigger. Try to be as specific as possible here. In this sentence, we are seeing that the deadline to do something about this risk is the end of March. This means that in April, this will no longer be a risk, but very likely it will become a problem because we're running out of money on the project. But it's not the end of March yet, so we can still prevent the consequence from occurring. So if this condition comes true, then the consequence or impact may happen. What is that impact? Then staff may be cut. Okay, so if we don't have any actual money available on our account with which we can pay people's salary, then we will lose people on the project team. Why? Because payroll cannot be funded. So our ability to secure payroll funding here is the root cause. Note also our use of the word may to show that this is a risk, not a problem. Because maybe our staff is okay with waiting for their paycheck for a few days until that funding has made it into the project account and can be dispersed. Who knows? Now, please pause this video and look at the other examples on the slide. Analyze them to find the trigger or condition, the consequence or impact, and the root cause. Now that you understand how to use the grammar of a risk, take a moment to write down 2 risks that you associate with the laptop exercise from the beginning of this video. Use the correct grammar and really think about the root causes. If you cannot figure out what the root causes are, Draw the fishbone diagram from earlier to help you think in the categories in which you might want to look. And by writing down these risks, you have just started the risk register for your capstone project printing project. Here's what you have learned in this module. We have discussed how to apply the project risk management framework, especially risk identification and the causes and effects of project risks. You have learned and practiced how to locate and apply a risk identification taxonomy and how to use the correct risk grammar to prepare for successful analysis and response construction. Here are the words that you have learned in this module. Please ensure that you can define and explain each one of them. Thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you in a future video.